Welcome Leslie Ann Coles.
Hi. Well, I work in a number of categories, or I play in a number of areas, and certainly I'm navigating my way through creating original series. I'm working on a feature film, which I'm onlining shortly, and for theatrical release. And I'm working on a series, and as a writer, as an independent writer, sort of creator of original programming, I'm navigating my way through negotiations right now with a very well-established production company and trying to retain the copyright and the rights to certain on-screen credits, as well as I always attach myself as a producer to all of my work, whether I direct, whether I don't direct. But it's been very interesting because every contract is different, every company I work with is very different. And I'm learning a great deal about that. And speaking to music, my film, music is instrumental in my film, and I have a lot of independent musicians coming to me, wonderful musicians, who have given me their music, many of which have not registered their songs with SOCAN. And I'm very curious about that. So I'm learning about the machinations of the music industry and what is in place to protect musicians in terms of retaining their publishing rights while being able to contribute music to an independent feature film and all of that. I'm also the director and founding director of the Female Eye Film Festival, and we showcase films directed by women from all over the world. Over 98% of the films that come to us that are directed by these women are not only directed by these women, but they're also produced more often than not written. And so that's a whole other area that we're exploring right now as an organization that advocates for and promotes films that are directed by women, who, by the way, are still a minority.
Thank you for that. So I've been asked to speak about a topic that was the main subject of my doctoral studies and continues to be the subject of ongoing work and publications. As I was joking earlier, I guess I'm taking my freelancers on tour. And I think it's a fitting image given the company that I keep on this panel, and also the fact that there isn't a lot of money in the freelance publishing industry, at least the one that I've studied. So what I'd like to do is for you to picture the following scenario. Imagine that you are a professional freelance author in Canada. So you make about $17,000 a year, which is the yearly average here in Canada, and there's comparable figures in the US and the UK. Now, you write for newspapers and magazines, so every article counts. This is your bread and butter. Now, you're sitting at your desk this morning, or you're checking in your BlackBerry, and you receive an email from one of your friends who says, "What a great article. They found your article in this foreign database." And I guess at the beginning you're flattered, and then you begin to wonder, where else did my article end up? You didn't get any notice, you didn't give your consent, and you're not getting any monies for these additional uses. Now, you wouldn't be alone to think these questions or to wonder these issues about these issues, because in fact freelancers across the globe were in your very shoes. So they sued the publishers for copyright infringement, for having reproduced their works not only in print but in online CD-ROM third-party databases. And on the most part they won. There were a series of cases, about 16, 17 cases across continental Europe. There was a major settlement in the UK, major US Supreme Court decision, and Canada also had its very own. And as Stefan was saying, both sides declared victory. So I'll touch to that briefly. But what I'd like to do is just contextualize the issues, because publishers now are, in a sense, with these evolving business models, evolving technology, exploiting works not only in print but through a host of different technology. And there's at least two sides to the argument. The publishers argue that what they're doing, they're entitled to do so because there is no difference between the media, between the print and their digital counterparts. Second, that what they're doing is in the public interest. And third, that they're allowed to do this via the existing content.
I want to use my 3 minutes to talk at a sort of a 35,000-foot level about intellectual property rights in Canada in general. It's my view that intellectual property rights are very poorly understood in Canada. And this is true at all levels, whether it's government or even business. We don't talk about it, we don't think about it, and we don't write a lot about it. In fact, I would argue that this has created a missing link in Canada's innovation agenda. Now, the Conference Board of Canada, speaking of innovation, last year published a report in which they gave Canada a D in innovation. And in almost every category that they measured us against our peer group in the OECD countries, we were sliding, slipping, and falling. Now, they didn't propose any concrete answers for that, but I think I can. Now, one of them was discussed at a recent Ontario Economic Summit, which is hosted by the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and that was, it was suggested there that there was a very slow uptake, particularly on the part of small and medium enterprises in Canada, of ICT. Well, that's clearly something that has to be addressed. But I would argue that the same is true for intellectual property rights. And the reason for this is that intellectual property rights are going to be the currency of the future. They're going to be the underpinning.
So basically we're making a significant splash in the global industry. The challenge is that to develop and market a best-selling video game in today's environment requires a massive investment. Essentially due to advances in computing power and the graphics, it takes about a game development team of about 100 to 200 people, anywhere between 1 to 3 years to develop a game. And overall investment just in the game development, it costs anywhere between $10 to $30 million. When you include the marketing budget in there, which is sort of necessary in today's environment, it pretty much doubles that. So the development and marketing costs are actually quite considerable for the industry. And moreover, a very small percentage of the games that are actually developed actually become profitable. What happens is that you have these huge, massive titles like the Halo 3s or the Grand Theft Autos 4, which is being released next week, which essentially make massive amounts of money, which offset the fact that 90% of the games actually are barely breaking even, and most of them are not actually recovering the development costs. And again, if you were a publisher who is essentially dropping anywhere between $10 to $30 million to produce the game, it requires a significant amount of sales to actually recover that. So as you can see, sort of, it's absolutely critical that intellectual property in the games be adequately protected and enforced. Because literally what can happen is that piracy is an absolutely devastating issue for the industry, and because it completely siphons any of the revenue that's necessary to essentially recapture the investment that's made in the development of the games. And particularly because of the sheer cost of the games, often the sort of smaller studios, many of whom we see in Canada, literally work on a project-by-project basis. They'll spend all of their time working on one game. And the effect of piracy can be on them when their entire future sort of hinges on the development of this one game can be positively ruinous. And quite a number of studios have actually gone under.
I assume that by the time you got to me, you would have gone through a lot of the real general principles about why this is so important, the unparalleled threats, the unparalleled opportunities posed to our industries by the internet. And so with that in mind, I thought I'd take my very short time and offer you a little bit of insight into the film industry and how piracy affects that industry. As Stefan indicated, that CMPDA acts for the major motion picture studios associated with the Motion Picture Association of America, but piracy is by no means just an issue for our studios. There are many filmmakers here today, on the panel and otherwise, who can tell you just how important it is for them to be able to recoup the investment in their work, not to mention the integrity of the creative work that they produce. Like all creative industries, film industry takes capital and talent and produces copyright protected work. But filmmaking is a risky business and an expensive business. By expensive, I mean in 2005, the average cost to one of our studios was approximately $100 million for a picture. By risky, I mean, again in 2005, you're looking at about 6 out of 10 films that actually recoup their costs.